Picture this: snow in the trees, a pitch-black road that shouldn't have vehicles on it, and then, one by one, long-range drones sprint down that abandoned strip like they're taking off from a runway that doesn't exist. No lights, no markings, no second chances. And somewhere far away, on the other side of the border, the biggest city in Europe starts doing that thing it hates doing most. It panics. Because when the Moscow-bound waves start rolling in, you don't get a polite warning. You get airport closures, you get emergency alerts, you get air defense crews sprinting to stations. And the wild part is, the people behind these launches aren't some massive, obvious battalion with banners and TV crews. They're closer to a ghost team, a few hundred people, their own analysts, their own engineers. Call signs instead of names. And if you've been watching these strikes escalate through 2024 into 2025, you've probably asked the same question everyone else is asking: who is actually doing this? Because whatever Ukraine built here, it isn't just a drone. It's a system. And the ending? The ending is where Russia realized something terrifying. Sometimes the scariest drones aren't the ones that fly toward you. They're the ones that were already there. Stay with me, because in a few minutes, I'm going to explain the two-layer trick behind these waves and why Moscow's defenses keep getting forced to show their hand. Setup: why the Moscow waves matter. For most of this war, Russia has had something Ukraine didn't: a big stockpile of long-range missiles and the ability to launch nightly barrages. Ukraine, by comparison, has had to get creative. And creative is a nice word for what's actually happening, because Ukraine's long-range drone campaign has one job: hit what's behind the front line, not trenches, not the headline battlefield. The machines behind the battlefield: logistics hubs, ammunition storage, fuel and energy nodes, factories that keep the war machine breathing. And here's why it matters. Every time Russia is forced to defend its rear, it's forced to spend money, time, and air defense attention away from the front. That's the theory. But the last couple years turned that theory into something a lot more real. Because once Ukraine started sending drones deeper, you began seeing the pattern. A strike is reported. Footage starts popping up online. Officials start speaking carefully, sometimes confirming targets, sometimes denying details. And then Russia's air defenses respond, and Moscow's routines get disrupted. Now we're going to talk about the secret unit behind a big part of this. But first you need to understand something. Ukraine didn't just decide to do long-range drones. They built an ecosystem that can produce them, replace them, and scale them. And that's where the story really begins. Part 1. The machine that builds the waves. In early 2024, Ukraine's leadership publicly pushed a major idea. Drones aren't just a tool. They're becoming their own category of warfare. President Zelensky signed a decree initiating the creation of a separate branch devoted to unmanned systems. The Unmanned Systems Forces. That's not a marketing tagline. That's a signal that drones are no longer support, they're strategy. And around the same time, Ukraine's digital minister was openly saying the quiet part out loud. Ukraine planned to produce thousands of long-range drones and had up to 10 companies, making drones that could reach as far as Moscow and St. Petersburg. Think about what that implies. This isn't one inventor in a garage. This is an industry sprint. Range categories expanding, production ramping, and a pipeline that can keep sending waves even when some of them don't make it. Because here's the harsh reality of drones. They're not magic. They're not invincible. They get jammed. They get shot down. They get lost. So if you want deep strikes, you need quantity and iteration. Which brings us to the people who turn "we can build drones" into "we can launch them tonight." Part 2. Meet the unit that doesn't want you to know its address. In January 2025, Reuters got rare access to a long-range drone launch by a Ukrainian unit. But, with a condition that the exact location and date could not be disclosed for security reasons. And the scene is straight out of a spy movie. Drones rolling down an unlit road, engines whirring, one after another lifting into the night. The commander they spoke to didn't use a real name, only a call sign, Casper. And he describes the mission in plain terms. Hit logistics hubs in the rear. Hit ammunition warehouses, reduce pressure on the front. But here's where it stops being a drone team and starts sounding like a small tech company. That happens to launch aircraft. This unit, Ukraine's 14th Unmanned Aerial Systems Regiment, is a few hundred people and has its own analysts and engineers with a focus specifically on long-range strikes. That detail matters, because a long-range strike isn't just press button. You need target logic, timing logic, routes, risk, weather, defenses, and likelihood of impact. So when you hear waves, what you're really hearing is a cycle: analyze, build, launch, observe, adapt. And Reuters also spoke to one of the unit's founders, another call sign, Fidel. He said they had drones that reached ranges of 2,000 kilometers during combat missions. 2,000. That's not frontline support, that's deep reach. And they weren't talking about fantasy targets either. Fidel said their unit carried out strikes including on the Engels airbase, a known base for Russia's strategic bombers. Now pause here, because this is the part most people miss. Ukraine isn't relying on one secret unit alone. There are multiple lanes. Regular military units like the 14th UAS Regiment doing long-range launches. Ukraine's security service, the SBU, being tied to many deep strike operations, and military intelligence structures conducting their own missions. It's not one hand on one joystick, it's a network. And once that network started scaling, Moscow started feeling it. Not once, repeatedly. Part 3. The Moscow moment. When the waves got big. If you want to see the wave effect in action, look at the pattern around Moscow. In November 2024, Russia reported shooting down 34 drones heading toward Moscow. What Reuters described as the biggest strike on the capital up to that point in the war, forcing flights to be diverted at major airports. And you know what always happens next. The internet lights up, unverified clips, buzzing sounds in the night, skyline shots with dots moving across them. Then comes 2025. On March 11th, 2025, Russia reported Ukraine's biggest ever drone attack on the Moscow region. 343 drones downed overall, with 91 over the Moscow region, and a temporary shutdown at all 4 of Moscow's main airports. That's not a single drone. That's a pressure test. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Reuters described Moscow's defenses as layered, electronic umbrellas, internal layers over, strategic buildings, and a complex web of air defenses meant to stop drones before they reach the Kremlin area. So every wave does 2 things at once. 1, it threatens a target. 2, it forces the defense system to reveal how it reacts. Where does it jam? Where does it shoot? Where does it fail? What gets protected first? And if you're Ukraine, you don't need every drone to hit. Sometimes the value is in what Moscow is forced to do. Close airports, divert flights, activate systems. Every time that happens, it's a signal Moscow can be pressured. But the Moscow-bound waves aren't only about Moscow. They're also about the economic engine behind the war. Part 4. The other target, the war's fuel tank. Back in March 2024, Reuters reported that a Ukrainian intelligence source said long-range drones launched by the SBU had hit 12 Russian oil refineries during the war so far, as part of a strategy to undermine Russia's economic potential and reduce petrodollars. And that's the part that makes this campaign more than symbolic, because energy isn't just money, it's movement, it's logistics, it's the ability to keep trucks and armor supplied. Fast forward to late 2025, and Reuters reported the scale of Ukraine's energy target campaign. Since August, at least 58 attacks on key Russian energy sites, with drones reaching about 2,000 kilometers into Russian territory. And Reuters calculated that these strikes knocked out around 17% of Russia's refining capacity. In mid-August, rising to 21% by the end of that month. That's not one lucky hit. That's attrition. And that brings us to the part that honestly shocked almost everyone watching. Because it wasn't just that Ukraine could send drones toward Russia. It's that Ukraine found a way to remove the biggest weakness of long-range drones. The long part. Part 5. What happened next shocked Russia. The strike that didn't start at the border. Long-range drones have a built-in problem. They have to fly a long way. That means more chance to be detected, more chance to be jammed, more time for defenses to react. But on June 1st, 2025, Reuters reported on an operation that flipped that entire logic. Ukraine's domestic security agency, the SBU, acknowledged an operation codenamed Spider's Web. And the concept was simple in the most terrifying way. Don't fly from far away. Get close first. Reuters reported that Ukraine's security official described drones being hidden in structures, transported by truck near airbases, then released by a remotely activated mechanism, allowing the drones to fly out and attack. The SBU claimed 41 warplanes were hit and estimated $7 billion in damage. And Zelensky said 117 drones were used, calling it Ukraine's longest-range operation. Now, important detail, numbers in war are contested. The US later assessed that up to around 20 warplanes were hit and about 10 destroyed, according to Reuters. Russia denied planes were destroyed and said damage would be repaired. But regardless of the exact count, the psychological impact was undeniable. Because this wasn't a drone flew 2,000 kilometers and slipped through. This was drones launched from deep inside Russia. And that changes what defending Moscow even means, because you can build a wall at the border. But what do you do when the threat doesn't start at the border? That's why the ending shocked Russia. Not because drones exist, but because the game shifted from, can you stop them in the air, to, can you even find them before they take off? The takeaway: why this drone war keeps escalating. So when people ask, who is behind the Moscow-bound waves, the answer is not one name. It's a layered ecosystem, a national push to treat unmanned systems as a core branch, a fast-growing production pipeline, units like the 14th UAS Regiment built for deep strike missions, security and intelligence services running their own operations, and occasionally, an operation so audacious it forces everyone to rewrite the rulebook. And here's the thing. In a drone war, the front line isn't just where the soldiers are. The front line is where the enemy's logistics stop feeling safe. Now, before you run with every dramatic clip you see online, remember, a lot of details in these operations are intentionally obscured, and claims from all sides aren't always independently verifiable in real time. Even major reporting often notes limits on verification, especially when it comes to footage, locations, and exact damage. But the big picture is hard to ignore. The waves are real, the escalation is real, and the people behind them are building something that doesn't look like a traditional air force at all. It looks like a shadow industrial network that can reach deep. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we connect the dots between what's happening on the ground, what's surfacing online, and what the strategy actually means, make sure you're subscribed. Because the next phase of this war isn't going to be decided by who has the biggest bomb. It's going to be decided by who can adapt faster, when the sky is full of machines that cost less than a car. And the scariest part? We're still early in this era, deep. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we connect the dots between what's happening on the ground, what's surfacing online, and what the strategy actually means, make sure you're subscribed. Because the next phase of this war isn't going to be decided by who has the biggest bomb. It's going to be decided by who can adapt faster, when the sky is full of machines that cost less than a car. And the scariest part? We're still early in this era,